Hey everybody, it's Master Gallengeist here, bringing you my review for Outlander Season 2 on Starz. And I overall really enjoyed this season more because I think they did a better kind of overall flow. I mean, granted, the first one was pretty good. We got some kind of change-ups here, a little bit of a kind of streamlining of certain kind of storylines going on, some really good casting for certain kind of characters, and mainly, what stopped me from going like full gung-ho on the first one is that we got a little bit better action scenes here. Now granted, we still get kind of shaky cam and everything, but that sometimes mainly goes in with like the Preston Pans and like Culloden's battles, and we also got some good fights with like Jamie versus Randall in France, and well, not fights, but like the big kind of duel bit. So this one still pretty much follows this as faithfully as pretty much possible for the second book. However, instead of 16, we are now down to 13 episodes, and the episode count keeps kind of going down as the season goes on. I mean, I've looked at it, and I'm like, okay, that's kind of weird that they're doing that. As long as you've got enough time for certain things. I do notice that certain kind of episodes are elongated, and it's just like, oh god. Now, we pretty much start off a little bit better of Claire being back in 1948, and pretty much then getting us back up to speed of what was going on in France. Seeing her reunited with Frank, that they're going to live together, that they're going to raise the child as their own. It's like, alright, cool. Let's see how this kind of works. And then we pretty much take the bulk of the season dealing with France and Scotland. And France was very interesting because it had a more vibrant color palette than what we had seen in Scotland in the first season. Not that Scotland didn't have any kind of color, it was a different kind of color. This gets more of a kind of gaudy kind of look because we're seeing them infiltrate the high nobility, trying to deal with everything. Of course, Claire making an enemy of Saint Germain. What kind of goes on that because of her being like, yo, these people have smallpox, and of course they have to take out the boat, and the Count doesn't give a shit, and would have been fine with the plague just rolling ass through Paris. It's like, no. And the only kind of weird thing is we got more out of Jamie's relative Jared in the book, whereas here it's just the main kind of thing of getting set up and understanding the kind of Jacobite cause and them kind of getting into it. They did a very good casting on fucking Bonnie Prince Charles. Oh my god. He's a fucking tool. Like, saying mark me all the time, thinking that like it's God's will and doing all this stupid fucking shit. Eventually getting to the point of doing the uprising of 1745 and like attempting to take London super fucking quick, and then having to deal with wintering and how nobody ever fucking thinks of that, and not getting the kind of support that he needs. And I love how Jamie gives it to him straight up, like, I don't know how you're going to unite the clans because he's been living there. He's seen the clans, and trying to unite them is just like, holy fucking shit. We do also kind of get linked up to Gallus's kind of look at the fallout in the 1960s of what was going on. I'm like, why are you going for this monarchy shit? I mean, if the clans had just united themselves and figured out what to kind of do, I think they would have had a better shot than listening to some asshole who doesn't even really know how these people work and operate. It was just nuts because nobody fucking came to really support him. He only had certain amounts of the Highlands. Now granted, I wish they kind of went a little bit more in depth into it. However, there are multiple different kind of main objective points for this show. Main one is like Jamie and Claire and their whole relationship. And I think they did a really good job of showcasing that here and seeing them both do certain things where I think they tempered it better than certain kind of parts in the book, because sometimes you're thinking, okay, you're being really fucking stupid, like one or the other. And then in here, we're able to see more of their different kind of points of view and be like, okay, I can understand why you're acting like this, even though you're being a kind of dick. And the best kind of bit is that I like this better than the book, was because it fell into a trap of Jamie would have to go do something, and the book wouldn't tell us, and we wouldn't be in his perspective, whereas here we would be, and then he would relay that information to Claire, and that's how he would get it. Here, we'd see a character do something, showing, and then we'd pretty much gloss over them getting the information or have the information relayed into such a succinct manner. We didn't spend like more than 2 seconds. We didn't have the whole thing to be like completely and utterly relitigated on that kind of bit. Mother Hildegard is a very kind of good casting as well, and the Count and Raymond. These were kind of bigger kind of characters. However, Hildegard was not as tall as I kind of envisioned her from the book. The Count definitely had the haughtiness and being the asshole. They cast him pretty well. I liked who they cast for Louis, even though I viewed Louis as older. And Raymond just was pretty much spot on. I liked how they were able to develop his relationship with Claire here. It wasn't spent on as much in the book, I believe, or how I kind of viewed it and how I kind of read it. Here, I got a better kind of sense of like her friendships with Hildegard and Raymond, and just learning how they kind of operate. Raymond pretty much doing his kind of occult stuff, doing his kind of search for knowledge, while also trying to make sure that nobles aren't killing each other completely, giving certain kind of potions and poisons that will not severely harm people. This mainly comes in the effect of the Count pretty much attempting to poison Claire and giving that whole kind of scare as well, before we eventually start getting into the point where we think that this is the child that we see in the future, because we see Claire with a kid in the 1950s, and we're like, what the fuck's kind of going on? But then we learned that this is a miscarriage, because everything starts building up to a point. We see them attempting to pretty much stymie the Stuart Rebellion and being unsuccessful at any kind of point. And then we see them trying to like pretty much get the rebellion to win on the other side and not being able to do that either. It's interesting of learning potential anchor points where you can change certain kind of things, but yet certain kind of fate things kind of go on, and you're like, what the fuck? However, we pretty much see the reintroduction of Blackjack Randall, who had survived his encounters with the cows, and seeing him in the court and just understanding his just antagonistic nature with Claire and Jamie, and Jamie getting the news and being happy about it so that way he can wreak his vengeance. It's like, no. Like, I understand it to a certain degree because of everything that Blackjack put him through, but you got to watch out for that. And then of Claire, of course, ringing the promise from him that he would wait a year to pretty much make sure that Frank would be born. However, that doesn't really happen out that way because of how Randall goes after Fergus and Jamie duels him, thus of course leading to Claire miscarrying Faith and all that going on. I think that that whole kind of bit was pretty well done, because we also then see other kind of little things as well. Murtaugh being told about her being from the future. We see these servants that really had not as much prominence in the books being given more prominence. The maid, Magnus, the steward, and how Magnus tried to kind of like help her to the dueling spot, and then of course welcoming her home after her miscarriage, and just everybody trying to be as supportive to her as possible. And then, of course, seeing the blow up between Jamie being released from the Bastille, and Claire and him just kind of like going at it over what was going on. Her saying that she did hate him before she had pretty much learned of why he decided to duel Blackjack, and how they just pretty much wanted to go home. And everything fucking going completely and utterly nuts. We see the potatoes. We see make their kind of debut, which was nice. It's important. It's not very, very important, but it's important that it showcases that Ollie Brock survives because of these kind of things. Before Charles Stewart signs Jamie's name, pretty much pledging him to his cause, and then seeing Jamie trying to do his best. We see him hooking up with Lord John, well, the young Lord John Grey, and Preston Pans, and what's kind of going on there. I did like that we shifted up a different kind of point where they're getting ready for battle, and Claire's having PTSD from World War II. It's like, yeah, she went from one horrendous war to this one, and everything that kind of started going nuts here. We see Dougal attempting to pretty much power play to be this big important kind of figure and clashing with Jamie constantly before it, of course, gets to the head. We see Angus and Rupert just being dill holes before eventually getting to the point where Rupert gets severely injured, but Angus dies as well because he had internal injuries. And it just gets nuts as they start losing the momentum. They won one battle and just pretty much lose the war. And Graham McTavish really does a great job of showcasing Dougal's kind of descent, where he thinks he's this great kind of strategist, this great kind of person to be, and Claire's able to pretty much call him on his bullshit. And he very much echoes what we see with Bonnie Prince Charles. These people who believe within the marrow of their bones that they can do these certain kind of things, and all evidence to the contrary shows that they cannot handle their men. They flagrantly disregard other people's kind of roles, like Dougal would do with Colum, and also does with Jamie, as we see Jamie having to deal with them just bringing in 10 people out of nowhere, and the sentries not questioning and stopping them, or leading them having to be whipped, and Jamie taking a whipping as well. But that's important, because at the first, there's one portion where he has the sentries whipped, and then there's another one where he also gets whipped as well because of the insubordination. He's not leading correctly, and he has to take it as well. It's like, wow, that's how a leader leads. And seeing him kind of do these tactics, train these people up his shoulders, Dougal's like, fuck it, we'll just do island charges and shit. It's like, against just muskets and bayonets and cannons. And you see that with the fall of Culloden. They decided to fight on an open field. Of course it was not going to end well. If they had decided to do guerrilla tactics and tactics similar to what was used during the American Revolution, that'll follow, things might have been differently. However, this season ends a little bit like we don't get the complete fallout of Culloden. That, of course, happens in Season 3. The last episode is the kind of weirdest one because we see the stuff going on with Culloden. It's very kind of jumpy. I don't like it for that reason. Even though I like kind of what's kind of going on with it. Let's see here. We also get the whole bit with Mary and understanding of how she gets linked up with the Randalls. An interesting part that kind of goes on with that is that she then learns that Claire had persuaded Alex to not marry her, and that she's pissed off that. That's, of course, after we get Murtaugh taking out the Duke of Sandringham and everything. That was kind of nutty, and I'm glad that they kind of were able to showcase that off as Murtaugh comes out with an axe and just fucking, it takes like 3 chops to take the fucker's head off. And Mary is able to kill her rapist as well. It's like, and the actress does a really good job of just showcasing her kind of timidity in Paris and what kind of went on in the whole kind of bit that kind of led to those kind of issues for Jamie as he attempted to try and discredit Charles. It was kind of successful before the whole bit of what happened there, and then her taking out the dude and getting together with Blackjack, and Blackjack being like, I'm horrendous, I shouldn't be with her, and Claire just being like, fuck it, no, someone needs to take care of her. Claire helping Colum to die, that was actually pretty well acted and well done. I did like seeing those kind of scenes and understanding what kind of goes on a little bit better. It just felt like a more kind of even flow than what I was used to in the books. So the last one, we jump into 1968 with Claire reunited with Roger, Reverend Wakefield's adopted son, and then we get Brianna. Now, out of all the casting, I did not like who they cast for Brianna. She just didn't really fit what kind of goes on that I kind of had in my head with Brianna in the books. I imagined her taller. The thing is, most of the stuff that she kind of has pretty much lines up from the content from the book. So I don't have an issue with the content. I have an issue with her acting and delivery of it. It just doesn't flow for me. Now, granted, we also get introduced to Roger, who doesn't look anything like was described in the book for me. However, I think the actor did a very good job of being Roger. And there's really, for what I get, not that much chemistry between the actors here for Roger and Brianna, so it's going to be kind of a tougher sell for me as the series goes forward with the TV adaptation. I don't hate her as an actress or anything like that. It just, I kind of groan when I see her kind of popping up for it, for doing the kind of stuff as Brianna. But they then link up, and we see that the main thing is pretty much them figuring out that Jamie survived Culloden, them linking up with Galus Edgar's here, and her traveling through the stones, Claire pretty much telling Brianna about all the kind of stuff. And there even really isn't that strong of a mother-daughter chemistry between Brianna and Claire for me, in my opinion. If you disagree with me on that, it's quite alright. I totally get it. Ignore my ass. That's fine. That's cool. That's good. Enjoy your shit. That's awesome. Like I enjoy my shit. It's cool. It wasn't working for me here. Also, it didn't help for the fact that they're aging up Claire by like 20 years by putting like this fucking helmet wig on her. That just, I don't know if it was a wig, but like how they styled it, I'm just like, oh god. But we get through a lot more of what took a couple of pages sometimes, or like vast kind of sections in the books for me to kind of get through in a better kind of time period. However, the main issue I had with this adaptation is how we were jumping back and forth between Culloden and Jamie doing his shit and everything kind of going on, and them researching Jamie, trying to figure out how he survived, and then Galus being like, hey, I killed this dude, and then jumping through the stones, and we learned that Brianna and Roger can hear the stones as well. It's like, And then, of course, she apologizes to her mother. We don't see the graves, but they are able to figure out that Jamie is alive. Let's see here. And that's pretty much where it ends, where Claire's looking at the stones and the sun's kind of coming up. It's like, oh shit, so that's our next kind of objective, to find out how Jamie survived, where he kind of went, and if he's still alive at this point, as they're still trying to figure out the kind of time differentials that are going on between the years, staying 3 years in the past, 3 years passing in the present, future kind of feel. So we'll see how that's going on. I've already started looking into that, so I'm trying to like fight any kind of bleed over effect that kind of occurs from that. But overall, I like that they stuck mostly to what was going on in the second book, but adapting it in a way that kind of kept the parts that were important. I liked seeing the political intrigues, Jamie hanging out so much at that brothel, getting Fergus, understanding him, using him to pretty much help out, but also him not completely and utterly using Fergus, but bringing him as part of the team. Master Raymond, definitely has some interesting kind of things going on. When Claire was able to help him out when he was brought to trial with the Count Saint Germain in front of Louis, and how he was able to do a sleight of hand to pretty much poison the Count. He's definitely a good character for this time period, because this is mainly the first kind of two books dealing with that she's in the past, and then trying to stop the uprising, and then, of course, since 20 years have passed, we don't see really Master Raymond before we go off on other kind of tangents historically as well. But I liked seeing how Claire and Jamie kind of work together to try and achieve their objectives. First in Paris, with all its kind of colorful stuff, and how they're trying to deal with everything. Claire being like, I don't like ordering people around, but she kind of has to get used to it. Same with Jamie dealing with the wine business and trying to do all this subterfuge and everything when he's the Highland warrior, where he eventually gets back to the kind of Culloden thing, which is what he was good at. But then we'll see how time kind of changes that for us. Yeah, Brianna was the biggest kind of... It's really hard to put it down to what I don't like about it. It's mainly in the delivery and how she kind of presents Brianna. Now, granted, I don't know if that's her and her interpretation or the director's content. There's a lot of different kind of factors in play. I'm not going to pin it down to like any kind of one lane thing, but for the most part, I'm fine with Claire, Jamie, Roger, all the rest of them. Even with ones that are a different kind of casting than I usually or normally would kind of go for, it's her that's the sticking point. And whenever I'm trying to look or do certain kind of things, I might not do it in the moment, but I'll like close my eyes and try and figure out and like try and remember the scene in my mind, but then kind of just hear the voice and everything and see if it's like the content, the delivery of the content, that kind of thing. I don't know. It just, something's off. Yeah, but even then it's not like the worst kind of thing. There's always going to be those kind of little bits that kind of pop up, and if they're not that annoying, I don't really care that much about them. That's why I'm still able to give this a really good thumbs up, because we got a lot of good character development, the back and forth, the understanding of Claire and Jamie's relationship, the execution of Blackjack Randall, Frank, and everything kind of going on, the differences with that. The action scenes getting better, where it's not completely and utterly jumpy, unless it's a kind of giant kind of battle point where it kind of does make sense that it's a little bit jumpy. But we'll definitely get more into kind of plot developments when I get into parts where I haven't really read the books and see how it goes with the show. Now, granted, there's also a companion thing where I can pretty much read a synopsis of what kind of goes on from the book, so that way I can compare and contrast what kind of goes on in the show versus what goes on in the books. So we still will kind of have that, but it'll be interesting to be like, alright, let's kind of see what goes on here. Season 3, I've still gotten through the third book, Voyager. We'll see how that kind of works out and happens, but I'm having a fun time so far, and I enjoy it. Granted, sometimes they focus a little bit too much on the love scenes, of where it takes up a more time than it should, because there's only so much. There's only so many. My thing is, there's only so much you can actually do with the love scenes before you get into a trouble of like, we gotta make sure this isn't porn. You know what I mean? So it's like, alright, now important kind of bits of them kind of just getting back together after certain kind of things. I'll get more into that in season 3, but I do like that we have a pretty decent balance. I'm like, I don't mind romance and everything like that. It's just when you take a long kind of time. It reminds me of when I went to see The Matrix Reloaded in theaters. We're seeing all this kind of stuff, and then we've got the Trinity and Neo kind of love scene, and I'm like, can we get this going? And I'm like, yeah, I don't mind it, but when you take a long ass time for it, I'm like, come on, I want to see the plots and the characters and the development and everything. I'm not here for almost porn. You know what I mean? It's kind of weird. If that explanation makes sense, where it's almost like, all right, yeah, I understand that they love each other. I understand how sex works and shit. Let's kind of move along, please. Because that's my focus. My focus is on the characters, the development. And I understand it's an important kind of bit to show character and development for how these characters love each other. Just sometimes they just take a longer kind of timeline. Alright. I get it. So I am excited to see where this goes. I do know that we are still... that one season technically still has a part 2 that needs to come out, which I fucking hate when something like that happens and a season is split like that. It's like, oh god, they were doing it. It kind of worked for Breaking Bad, but it's like some of the shows kind of fell into that kind of stupid fucking trap where it's like, hey, this worked for this show, let's do it for this one. It's like, eh. But we'll get through it and see how this kind of works out. So those are my opinions on this season. Tell me what you guys think in the comments below. If you liked it, if you didn't like it, if you agree with me, if you disagree with me. Also like and subscribe, and I hope you have a good day.